Winifred froze. "You're using that against me?" Whispers rippled around the room. One of the cousins murmured, "I heard she had postpartum depression." Thomas nodded slightly, his tone saintly. "And I never blamed you for that, Win. But you're letting the old fear come back again." Eleanor rose and approached her daughter-in-law, voice dipped in pity sharpened to a blade. "I know things have been hard, dear, but don't drag this family into your imagination. Julia's disappearance is tragic, but that doesn't mean someone in this house is guilty." Winifred bit her lip until she tasted blood. "Mother, I have proof. Julia texted me and the police." "Text?" Thomas interrupted smoothly. "What text? I checked your phone. There's nothing there." "You deleted it," she cried. He tilted his head, voice a whisper. "Do you have any proof that I did?" Silence. Only the tick-tock of the wall clock filled the room. Eleanor exhaled, shaking her head. "Winifred, I think you should take a break. Maybe stay with your family for a few weeks. Thomas can take care of things here." Winifred stared at her. "You want to separate me from my daughter?" "No, dear, just until you've rested. The child needs a calmer mother." She turned toward Thomas. He was smiling faintly, perfectly composed. In that moment, she understood. This had all been prepared. Every word, every glance orchestrated to make her look unstable. Tears welled up, but she refused to crumble. She stood tall and swept her gaze across the room. "You can all believe him if you want, but I know who he is, and when the truth comes out, I want every one of you to remember tonight." "Winifred," Eleanor began. "No." Winifred cut her off, her voice cold. "This isn't paranoia. It's a warning." She turned and walked out, her legs trembling but her stride unwavering. Thomas didn't stop her, he only murmured as she passed. "You just isolated yourself? Now no one will believe you." By the time she got home, night had fallen. The lights flickered as she stepped inside. Then ping, a new message, from Julia's number. "You did well. Don't trust your family either." Winifred froze. Her heart pounded. The timestamp sent while she had been sitting in that living room, surrounded by Thomas's family. Julia was watching her, or someone pretending to be Julia. She looked around the dim, silent house. The flickering light threw her warped shadow across the wall. Her voice trembled as she whispered, "Julia, is that you? Or is someone playing this game with me?" No answer, only the wind slipping through the doorframe cold, mocking, like laughter made of ice. That night, Winifred barely dared to turn off the lights. She sat in the living room, a cup of cold coffee in her hand, eyes fixed on her phone. The last message from Julia's number still glowed on the screen. "Don't trust your family either." She typed back, "Julia, where are you?" No response. A few minutes later, the screen lit up again, a new message, with a photo attached. The sight of it froze her blood. It was her asleep on the sofa, a blanket half draped over her body, hair spilling loose. The photo had been taken from outside the window. Timestamp, 4 minutes ago. Her heart slammed in her chest. She leapt up, rushing to the curtains. They were still closed, except for a narrow slit. She yanked them open and peered into the rain-slick street. No one. Only darkness, drizzle, and the empty glow of a street lamp. She turned back, hands shaking, and typed frantically, "Julia, who's out there? Is that you?" The reply came almost instantly, as if from someone standing right outside. "He's watching you, too." Her fingers trembled. "Who is he?" "You already know." Then another message arrived, a 6-second video. The shaky camera peered through her curtains. straight into her living room where she was standing right now. The ceiling light flickered once, twice, like a cruel wink. She dropped the phone onto the table and bolted to the door, flinging it open. Darkness. Wind hissing through the trees. No one. But on the porch, a rain-soaked piece of paper clung to the stone step. She bent down and picked it up, trembling. It was a printed photo of Julia standing in front of a decaying house. The words scrawled across it in red ink. "You'll find me where it all started." The house, Hillcrest. Winifred stumbled back, her chest tightening. Every instinct screamed to run, but something stronger held her there a pull, as if the message were a summons. Did Julia want her to come? Or was someone luring her into a trap? Her phone buzzed again. "Don't go alone." The final message left her breathless. She looked around, the door still open, the night thick and motionless, yet she felt eyes on her, unseen and close. The next morning, she went straight to the police station and handed her phone to Detective Raymond. He frowned as he scrolled through the messages. "You're certain this number belonged to Julia Carter?" "Yes, I saved it myself." He exhaled. "Our records show this number was deactivated 3 weeks ago. The carrier confirmed it." Winifred stared. "That's impossible. I got those messages last night." "Then someone's impersonating her," he said grimly. "Who and why we don't know yet." He leaned forward, voice low. "Mrs. Winifred, be careful. Don't leave the house after dark. If anyone contacts you again, record everything. This isn't just a missing person case anymore. This might be psychological manipulation." "A setup." Winifred nodded, fists clenched, but as she stepped out of the station, her phone vibrated again. No name, no number, only a camera icon and a short link. She clicked it, and the color drained from her face. A 10-second video began to play, filmed inside the Hillcrest house. In the dim light, 2 figures appeared, a woman and a man. The woman's head was bowed, her hair wet, her voice trembling. "Please, I did what you said. Don't hurt her." The man's reply was low, cold, and unmistakably familiar. "It's too late for that." Thomas's voice. The video ended, the screen went black. Then one final line appeared. "He's coming for you next." Winifred staggered back, almost dropping the phone. The sun was blazing outside, but inside her chest, a storm had already begun to rise. 3 days after the terrifying string of messages, Winifred began to feel herself slipping away from reality. She barely ate, barely slept. Every creak in the house made her flinch. Then, just after noon on Thursday, her phone rang. A number she didn't recognize. "Mrs. Winifred Williams?" The voice was female, low and steady. "Yes." "Who is this?" "My name is Maya Carter. I'm an attorney. I represented Julia Carter in several legal matters before she disappeared." The name Carter made Winifred freeze. "Are you related to Julia?" "No, just the same surname. But I knew her, and I believe she's been trying to send you a message." They agreed to meet at a small cafe downtown. Maya arrived dressed in a black suit, sharp-featured, eyes cool, but voice gentler than expected. "Julia came to see me 2 weeks before she vanished," Maya said. "She brought a packet of documents and told me that if anything happened to her, I should deliver it to someone named Winifred Williams." Winifred's voice shook. "That's me." Maya reached into her bag and produced an envelope, yellowed at the edges. "I've kept it safe. But before I could send it, someone warned me, told me to forget about Julia Carter. I thought it was an empty threat, until my office was broken into." Her tone dropped to a whisper. "Whatever's in here, might be the reason Julia disappeared. Winifred opened the envelope. Inside were copies of a financial contract and a notarized authorization between Julia Carter and Ralph Donnelly. Maya frowned. Ralph Donnelly? That name sound familiar? Winifred shook her head. Maya pulled out her phone, typed quickly, then turned the screen toward her. Ralph Donnelly, CEO, Donnelly Financial Group. A press photo appeared a silver-haired man, steely-eyed, shaking hands with Thomas Williams. Winifred's stomach dropped. Julia worked part-time for Donnelly's company, Maya continued. She once told me about a joint insurance project Donnelly ran with Thomas. I think she uncovered something dirty, and Donnelly needed to silence her. Winifred's throat tightened. He's Mr. R. Maya nodded. Highly possible? They sat in silence. Outside, rain began to patter against the windows. Inside, the soft clinking of spoons filled the air. Maya studied her carefully. Do you think Thomas knew about Julia's dealings with Donnelly? Winifred swallowed hard. I think he was part of it. Maybe they were in on the same plan. Then what do they both want now? Winifred looked up, her voice barely above a whisper. The house. That house where every forged document led back, where Julia had come so often, where she still lived now. It wasn't just a home. It was the key to everything. Maya nodded. If that's true, we need to move before they do. Julia might still be alive, but I'm afraid they'll come after you next. Winifred gave a hollow laugh. They already have. She pulled out her phone and showed Maya the photo of her sleeping on the sofa and the video from Hillcrest. Maya's face hardened as she watched. This sender? It's not Julia. Someone's staging these, making you believe she's alive to lure you out. Then Julia's really dead? Winifred whispered. I can't say for sure, Maya replied, meeting her eyes. But if she is alive, someone's forcing her to stay silent. Before they parted, Maya handed her a business card. This is my private number. Don't use your main phone, it could be tapped. I'll dig into Donnelly's files and find someone who worked with Julia. If I find anything, I'll call you immediately. Winifred gripped the card tightly for the first time in weeks. She felt a flicker of real hope. Thank you, Maya. You're the first person who's believed me. Maya's lips curved into a faint smile. I don't believe people, Mrs. Williams. I believe evidence, and I think we're about to find some. That night, the rain poured harder than ever. When Winifred came home, the house was dim and quiet. On the kitchen table lay a single white envelope, no name, no sender. She tore it open. Inside was a photo of her and Maya sitting in that cafe earlier that day, taken from across the street. On the back, written in black ink, was a single line. Even your lawyer can't save you. The blood drained from her face. Someone was watching their every move. And now, she realized the game had only just begun. That weekend, Eleanor invited the whole family to what she called a reconciliation dinner. Winifred accepted not because she wanted peace, but because she wanted to see. She wanted to watch Thomas perform, to witness how he'd twist the truth again, and this time, she wouldn't stay silent. The dining room glowed brightly, the long table draped in white linen. At its center sat a vase of roses, the one flower Thomas knew she despised. Everyone was already there. Thomas at the head of the table, calm, composed, wearing that polished smile he'd perfected. Winifred sat opposite him, dressed simply in black, her expression eerily serene. Thomas stood, raising his glass, voice soft, but carrying through the room. First of all, thank you all for being here. Family is everything, and I don't want misunderstandings to destroy that. He turned toward her, his gaze equal parts pity and precision. I know you've been tired, Win. Stressed. We all go through rough patches. But everyone here cares about you. Eleanor nodded, her tone maternal but edged with reproach. That's right, dear. I just want you to find peace. Don't let pain make you believe the world's against you. Winifred smiled faintly. So, you mean I've imagined everything? Thomas interjected smoothly. No one's saying that, Win. It's just, sometimes our minds betray us. Like thinking Julia texted you, for instance. Her voice came calm and sharp as glass. I don't think, Thomas. I know. The table fell silent. Even the clinking of cutlery stopped. Thomas kept smiling. Then why don't you show everyone your proof? Winifred met his eyes steady, unflinching. Gladly. She opened her bag, pulling out a small USB drive, the encrypted copy Maya had helped her make. She plugged it into her laptop and mirrored the screen to the TV on the wall. The room dimmed as the video began to play. Julia appeared, sitting in the Hillcrest living room, tears streaking down her face. He's watching me. If you see this, Win, don't believe him. Her trembling voice filled the air. Thomas shot up from his chair, composure cracking. Where did you get that? It doesn't matter, Winifred said, her tone cutting. What matters is that police forensics confirmed this was filmed 2 days before she vanished, and the male voice in the background? It's yours. Eleanor's voice broke. Thomas? My son? Thomas's eyes darted wildly as he tried to recover. No, this is staged. Julia hated me. She wanted to ruin my family. Winifred walked forward, placing a document in front of Eleanor, the life insurance papers. Then explain this. Julia's policy, the beneficiary, you, Thomas. Gasps rippled around the table. One of the cousins stood abruptly. My God, is this real? Thomas slammed his hand down. It's fake. She forged everything. Win knows that. Julia was a con artist. Winifred's voice remained ice cold. Maybe. But if she was, why were you with her at Hillcrest that night, and why did she vanish right after? Thomas's mouth opened, but no words came. Eleanor's hands trembled. Thomas, please, tell me the truth. He inhaled slowly, forcing a brittle smile. Mum, you believe me, don't you? Silence. The weight in the room was suffocating. Winifred looked around the familiar faces, now clouded with confusion and fear. She spoke quietly. I don't need anyone's belief. I just need you to remember when the truth finally comes out. I told you first. She shut the laptop, pulled the USB free, and slipped it back into her bag. Dinner was lovely, Thomas. Thank you for the performance. Then she turned and walked out. Behind her, Thomas stood frozen, face pale, while the room buzzed with whispers. At the doorway, her phone buzzed. A new message from Julia's number. He's not the only one you should fear. Winifred froze. Through the window, in the dim light of the garden lamps, a tall figure stood by the fence motionless, his face hidden in shadow, but his eyes fixed on her. Maya had been right. Mr. R wasn't just real, he was coming. Julia Carter's funeral was held on a cold October morning. There was no body, only an empty coffin at the center of the church, draped in white flowers and veiled in smoke from burning incense. The police had permitted the ceremony as a memorial, but Winifred knew better. This wasn't an ending, it was the opening act. The truth was about to break open. She and Maya had planned everything. Lure Thomas and Ralph Donnelly to the same place, because whoever had been sending those messages from Julia's number had promised, I'll be there. The church was packed. Thomas's family sat in the front pew, faces solemn, carefully composed for appearances. Eleanor in black, eyes swollen. Thomas stood near the coffin, his face unnervingly calm. Winifred walked in, drawing a wave of whispers. She wore a long coat, her face bare, her eyes steady and unafraid. Thomas gave a small, measured nod. His voice was low, almost intimate. "You really plan to use her death to punish me?" She didn't even look at him. "No, Thomas. I plan to use the truth." The ceremony began. The priest's voice rose and fell through the quiet space, his Latin chants echoing against stone walls. Winifred stood near the back, beside Maya. The scent of carnations around the coffin seemed to radiate an unnatural cold, not from weather, but from secrets that refused to rest. Then, just as the prayer ended, the church doors creaked open. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. A woman stepped in thin, cloaked in black, a wide-brimmed hat shadowing half her face. Maya's hand tightened on Winifred's arm. "It's her." The woman walked straight up the aisle to the coffin and removed her hat. The entire church went silent. Julia Carter. Her hair was shorter now, her face thinner, a faint scar slicing down her left cheek, but her eyes, haunted and fierce, were unmistakable. Eleanor gasped, clutching her chest. "My God, she's alive!" Thomas froze, then stepped forward, voice cracking. "Julia, how?" She cut him off with a bitter smile. "Surprised, Thomas? Did you really think you could make me disappear?" The air shattered like glass. Maya leaned close to Winifred, whispering, "Now." Winifred nodded and took a small blue leather notebook from her bag, the one Julia had mentioned in that recording. "If anything happens, look inside the blue folder." She walked to the altar, placed it down, and spoke clearly. "In this book is a list of everyone involved in the fake life insurance scheme run by Donnelly Group. Julia was the first whistleblower. Thomas handled the forged signatures. And Ralph Donnelly," she turned toward the crowd, "was the one in charge." Gasps broke through the room. 2 police officers near the entrance stepped forward. Thomas gave a low, humorless laugh. "Win, you've built a conspiracy out of scraps of paper." Julia's voice sliced through his. "No, I have the recording." She held up a small USB drive. "This is from the meeting between you and Donnelly. You said it yourself. If Julia talks, we lose everything." Thomas took a step back, his color draining. "You're lying." "Am I?" Julia's smile was cold. "I'm still alive because I sent a copy to the police." The church doors opened again. A tall man with silver hair and a black suit walked in. Ralph Donnelly. His voice was calm, almost gentle. "That's enough, Julia." The air froze. Maya whispered, "We called for backup, but they're not here yet." Donnelly strode forward, stopping between the pews, his gaze flicking from Winifred to Thomas. "You really are a fool," he said softly to Thomas. "She wasn't supposed to be here." Thomas's jaw tightened. "I thought you handled it." "She had more copies than we realized." Julia gave a thin laugh. "And I wasn't stupid enough to keep them all in one place. Winifred has everything." Donnelly turned to her, eyes like ice. "You have no idea what you've stepped into, Mrs. Williams. I don't kill people, but I can make them disappear." Winifred met his gaze, unflinching. "That's unfortunate, because today, no one's disappearing." Behind them, Maya signaled to the officers. They started forward, but before they could move, the lights flickered. Then went out. Screams. Rushing footsteps. A metallic clang echoed, and then a gunshot split the dark. Someone shouted, "Julia!" When the lights blazed back on, Julia was on the floor, clutching her chest, blood blooming through her black dress. Winifred dropped to her knees beside her. "Julia! No, Julia!" The police shouted for everyone to freeze, weapons drawn, but Donnelly was already gone. Thomas stood motionless, pale, shaking a gun in his hand, wrested from one of the officers. Winifred looked at him, her tears mixing with Julia's blood. "What have you done, Thomas?" he stammered, trembling. I didn't mean to. I just wanted to scare her," Julia gasped, gripping Winifred's hand, her voice barely a whisper. "The blue folder? More names? Find them?" And then her eyes went still. The church dissolved into chaos. Shouts of, "Call an ambulance!" echoed off the stone walls. Julia lay limp in Winifred's arms, blood soaking through her skirt. Thomas was tackled to the floor, the gun wrenched from his hand. He stammered, panicked. "No! I didn't mean to kill her! I didn't know there were bullets! I swear I didn't know!" Detective Raymond burst through the doors, his voice booming. "Secure the scene! No one leaves this building!" He scanned the room, then froze. Ralph Donnelly was gone. The rear door of the church swung open, curtains flapping wildly in the cold wind. Inside, Winifred clutched Julia, trembling. Julia's eyes fluttered open, her breath came in broken gasps. He won't stop," she whispered. "Donnelly! He has people inside the police. Don't talk now," Winifred pleaded. "Help is coming." Julia shook her head weakly, tears spilling down her cheeks. "In the blue folder, too. There's more. Bank records. Your name." "Mine?" A faint nod. Then her hand fell away. 2 hours later, the hospital was thick with noise sirens, radios, footsteps. Julia was in surgery. Thomas was under arrest. And Winifred sat in the corridor, numb, her hands still stained red. Detective Raymond approached, resting a hand on her shoulder. "We found Donnelly's fingerprints on the spare weapon. It looks like he planted it to make Thomas take the fall." Winifred blinked through tears. "But why? What does Ralph want?" Raymond opened his case file, pulling out a few sheets. "You should see this." It was a stack of financial records. Recipient, Winifred Williams. Amount, $1.5 million. Note, insurance payout, Carter Project. Winifred stared at the page, her voice breaking. "No, that's impossible. I never received any money." Raymond's tone dropped to a grim murmur. "But the account is real. Opened with your social security number. Donnelly's framing you, Mrs. Williams. You've been in this since the start." Her heart clenched. "He's turning me into the criminal." "Exactly. It's a perfect setup. Julia silenced, Thomas blamed, and you left holding the evidence. 3 moves, 1 outcome." Winifred buried her face in her hands, shaking. Maya came up beside her, offering a bottle of water, her voice steady but hard. "He can't win if we find blue folder 2. Did Julia say where it is?" Winifred lifted her head, her voice hoarse. "She only said, 'More names.'" She paused, then her eyes widened. "If I'm right, it's at Hillcrest." Raymond frowned. "You can't go back there. Donnelly will expect it." "That's why I have to," Winifred said quietly. "If I don't, he'll have another chance to erase me." Maya gripped her shoulder. "Then I'm coming with you." "Neither of you are going anywhere alone," Raymond snapped. "I'll send a team first." But Winifred shook her head. "Julia said Donnelly has men inside the force. How do I know your team isn't one of them?" Before Raymond could answer, his phone buzzed. He listened for a moment, and the color drained from his face. "The hospital just called. Julia lost too much blood. She's gone." The paper cup slipped from Winifred's hand, shattering on the floor. Maya tried to steady her, but she was already on her feet. Her voice was raw, trembling yet resolved. "There's no one left for him to kill. This ends tonight." That night, Winifred and Maya drove through the rain. The road to Hillcrest Inn was deserted, its sign half fallen, flickering weakly. Hillcrest Inn, closed for renovation. The wind howled through shattered windows. Room 502 still bore the faded yellow police tape. Maya whispered, "If Julia was right, blue folder 2 is here." Winifred nodded. Lifting her flashlight, the air inside was thick with mildew and old paint. Her beams swept across the cracked walls, the broken furniture until it caught a glint behind a shattered mirror. A narrow gap. She reached in, fingers brushing paper. A dust-covered blue envelope slid free. Scrawled on the front, for WW. "If I don't make it." Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside a list of wire transfers, over a dozen names. Executives from insurance and finance firms. And at the bottom, one name circled in bold red ink, Ralph Donnelly. Below it, a handwritten note. "He used your name because he knew Thomas would protect you." The realization hit like ice. Thomas wasn't the mastermind. He was the pawn. And she had been the shield. Donnelly had used her identity to legitimize the transfers. Knowing Thomas's loyalty would keep her silent. A creak echoed from outside. Maya stiffened. "Someone's out there." Winifred snapped off the flashlight, her pulse racing. A tall silhouette filled the doorway, voice low and rasping. "I told you not to come back here, Mrs. Williams." Ralph Donnelly. The door to room 502 burst open. Wind howled through the shattered frame, sending the dusty curtain ballooning like a ghost. Winifred tightened her grip on the blue envelope. Maya's flashlight trembled as its beam caught the figure stepping in. Ralph Donnelly, long coat, silver hair, face carved with age and eyes cold as stone. "You made me come here myself," he rasped, closing the door behind him. "I despise women who don't know when to stop." Winifred's voice stayed steady. "You killed Julia. And now you're here to silence me, too?" A crooked smile. "I didn't kill anyone. I corrected mistakes. Julia was foolish. She thought she could blackmail me with that notebook." He nodded at the envelope in her hand. "And she left it to someone who has nothing to do with this you." "Nothing to do with it?" Winifred's tone sharpened. "My name's on every one of your fake transfers. You turned me into an accomplice, Ralph. That's why you should have stayed quiet." He pulled a small silver handgun from his coat. "Or at least died looking innocent." Maya's breath hitched. "He's insane," she whispered. Donnelly swung the gun toward her. "And you the lawyer, unless you want to die with her. Hand over that file." Winifred shook her head. "You won't get it." In one quick motion, she shoved the envelope back into the crack behind the mirror. Donnelly laughed, low and harsh. "You think I don't know where it is?" He tapped something on his phone. From the hallway came a man's voice. "Back door's clear. No one gets out." Maya's fingers dug into Winifred's arm. "We're trapped." Donnelly raised the gun again. "Bring me the folder, or your friend dies first." Maya's eyes widened, pleading. Winifred faced him squarely. "What are you afraid of, Ralph? A woman and a few sheets of paper?" "I'm not afraid," he said, voice tightening. "I just hate inconvenience." A creak sounded behind him. Donnelly froze, turned Thomas. His shirt soaked with rain, eyes wild, a stolen police pistol in his grip. "Enough, Ralph," Donnelly chuckled. "The loyal puppet. I thought you'd still be in custody." "I escaped," Thomas said hoarsely. "They know you set me up. I came to end this." "End what? You're the one who pulled the trigger on Julia." Thomas's jaw tightened. "She died because of you. She died because she trusted you." Donnelly's smile widened. "You think Winifred still believes you?" Winifred's heart twisted. Thomas, is it true? Did you mean to kill her? He looked at her, desperate. No, Win, I swear. I only meant to scare her. I didn't know he'd switched the bullets. Enough! Donnelly roared, raising his gun. A gunshot split the air. Glass shattered, smoke and echoes. Maya screamed and hit the floor, clutching her shoulder. Thomas staggered back, eyes wide. Donnelly reeled, blood blooming through his coat, but he didn't fall. He smiled through the crimson. You think you've won, Winifred? I'm not the only one. Then he collapsed. The pistol clattered from his hand. Winifred dropped beside Maya. You're okay? It just grazed me, Maya gasped. Thomas stared at Donnelly's body, voice broken. I'll turn myself in. I'm done running, Win. You were right, I lied, but I never meant for you to be dragged into this. Tears stung her eyes. We crossed the line too long ago, Thomas. He nodded faintly, set the gun down, and stepped back just as sirens wailed outside. A SWAT team flooded the corridor, weapons raised. Detective Raymond led them in. No one moves! Ralph Donnelly is under national warrant! He caught sight of the fallen man, then turned to Winifred. What did you do? She met his gaze. Voice barely above a whisper. Just finished what he started. Raymond signaled the forensic unit. While they secured the room, he approached again. Do you have the original blue folder? Winifred pulled the dusty envelope from behind the mirror and handed it over. Julia left it for me. It's what got her killed. Raymond took it solemnly. And it's what's going to bring the rest of them down. When the others cleared the room, Winifred lingered before the cracked mirror. Her reflection stared back pale, exhausted, but with a strange, calm strength in her eyes. She whispered, Julia, we did it. A soft gust blew through the broken window, lifting the torn curtain. It fluttered once, as if someone unseen had finally left the room. 3 days after the Hillcrest shooting, the media exploded with headlines. Donnelly Group exposed for money laundering and insurance fraud, at least 12 arrested. Winifred and Thomas's names flooded every television channel. But this time, they weren't the accused. They were the survivors. Thomas was being held for further questioning. Maya was recovering from a shoulder wound. And Winifred, she returned to her old house, where the faint scent of Julia's lavender still lingered in the air. That morning, as police officers collected evidence, one of them handed her an envelope. We found this in Donnelly's safe. On the front, it read, for WW. Her pulse slowed. She opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a scrawled message. You were never the target. You were the plan. Beneath it was a photocopy, an email exchange between Donnelly and someone signed M. Carter. Maya Carter. That afternoon, Winifred went to the hospital. Maya sat up in bed, her shoulder bandaged, her smile weak. How are you feeling? Winifred asked. Better. The police say you're the hero of this whole thing. Don't call me that. Julia was the one who paid the price. Silence hung between them. Then Winifred pulled the paper from her pocket. How do you explain this, Maya? Maya's smile faded. So you found it? Who are you, really? Julia's attorney, Maya said quietly. And also, someone who once worked with Donnelly. Her eyes lowered. I helped him forge documents. Then Julia found out and threatened to expose him. I thought if I helped her disappear, it would all end. But he found her first. Winifred took a step back, her voice trembling. So, when you came to me, what was your purpose? To help me or to watch me? Maya sighed. Both. I had to make sure the evidence didn't fall into the wrong hands. But I didn't think Donnelly would actually kill her. I swear, I never meant to hurt you. Winifred stared straight into her eyes, voice icy. You sent the photos of me sleeping. You pretended to be Julia to make me believe she was alive, didn't you? Maya was silent for a long moment. Then she nodded. Yes. I needed you to go back to Hillcrest to retrieve the blue folder. If I'd told you the truth, you never would have gone. I had no other choice. Winifred's voice broke, tears forming. You used my fear. You made me believe Julia was alive. I know, Maya whispered. And I'll live with that for the rest of my life. But because of you, it's finally over. Winifred clenched her fists. No, Maya, it's just beginning. He was right, Donnelly wasn't the only one. And now I know who else he had. That night, she visited Thomas in the detention center. He looked thinner, worn down, but his gentle demeanor remained. When this is over, he said softly, I'll plead guilty. I deserve it. She said nothing, just placed a photocopy of the email on the table between them. Thomas looked down, his eyes widening. God, Maya was involved too? Yes, Winifred replied, her tone slow and cutting. But there's something else, the last line of the email. She pushed the page toward him. At the bottom, faint and blurred, was the sentence, secondary account managed by TW. Funds transferred. Thomas froze, his face draining of color. Do you have anything to say? His mouth opened, then closed. No words came out. Tears streamed down Winifred's face, but her voice was steady, almost cold. You took money from Donnelly, Thomas? You said you knew nothing, but you did. You just didn't think I'd find proof. Win, You didn't kill Julia, but you let her die. Thomas lowered his head, hands clenched. I was in debt. Donnelly promised to clear it if I looked the other way on some documents. I didn't think Julia would get hurt. Not until it was too late. I swear, I never wanted any of this. She stared at him, eyes full of tears. You don't need to swear. I don't believe in promises anymore. She turned toward the door, but before leaving, she spoke softly without looking back. I lost Julia. I lost my faith. And now, you've lost me. The door closed. Thomas lifted his head, his hollow eyes reflecting the cold light of the cell, the face of a man who'd finally realized what he'd destroyed. Late that night, Winifred returned home. On the table, a crumpled letter had slipped from the blue folder, written in Julia's familiar handwriting. If you're reading this, Win, that means I failed. But maybe you'll finish what I couldn't. Tell the truth, even if it kills you. Winifred placed the letter gently back on the table. Tears rolled down her cheeks. Her voice was low, breaking, but filled with resolve. I will. I'll tell everything. The dim light cast a soft glow over her face, the face of a woman who had walked through hell, and decided that the truth would be the only legacy she left behind. A week after that fateful night at Hillcrest, the rain came soft and steady, as if the sky itself was trying to wash away what was left behind. Winifred sat in the interrogation room of the precinct, a recorder and a cold cup of coffee in front of her. The door opened. Detective Raymond stepped in and gave a small nod. Mrs. Williams, are you ready? She took a deep breath and nodded. Yes. Today, I'll tell everything. The red light on the recorder blinked on, and she began starting from that first phone call in the dark, through the lies, the deaths, and the man who had pulled all the strings. Her voice was steady, slow, sometimes breaking, but no longer afraid. Each word felt like a wound finally being stitched closed by the truth itself. When she walked out of the room, Thomas was waiting in the hallway, handcuffed, 2 officers by his side. Their eyes met. No hatred, left just a quiet, exhausted sadness. He spoke softly. "I signed the confession. Everything. The money, the contracts, the orders from Donnelly. There's nothing left to hide." Winifred looked at him, calm and distant. "You did the right thing, finally." Thomas gave a faint, broken smile. "If there's a next life, I just hope I meet you before Donnelly ever finds me." She didn't reply. She just watched as they led him away, his footsteps heavy, slow, like a man walking into a room with no way out. That afternoon, every news station carried the same breaking story. Donnelly Group officially collapses, 14 arrested, including former attorney Maya Carter, accused of evidence suppression. Winifred stood in front of the television, watching Maya's image in handcuffs, her head bowed. The newscaster's voice was calm, almost reverent. Sources confirmed that the final evidence leading to the case's resolution was provided by Winifred Williams, the victim, the witness, and the only survivor. She didn't feel victorious, only hollow, a quiet emptiness spreading through her chest. That night, Winifred went to visit Julia's grave. The stone read, "Julia Carter, 1989-2025. She told the truth, even when no one believed her. Winifred laid a small bouquet of lavender on the grass and whispered, "You kept your promise, Julia, and so did I." A soft wind swept through, carrying the scent of wet earth. The petals trembled gently under the cemetery light. For a fleeting moment, she could almost feel Julia standing beside her, peaceful, smiling. The next day, Winifred appeared on a national program called Voices of Justice, a special series interviewing survivors of major criminal cases. The host leaned forward. "Weren't you afraid, telling your story so publicly?" Winifred smiled faintly, her eyes calm but deep. "I used to be. I was afraid of being called crazy, afraid the truth would hurt people. But I've learned that silence is what kills us first." The studio fell silent. She continued, her voice soft but sure. "I lost my husband. I lost my friend. I lost my faith. But I found the one thing that mattered most, my own voice." The host swallowed hard, visibly moved. "And what will you do now, after all of this?" Winifred looked straight into the camera. Her tone gentle but unwavering. "I'll write. Not to retell the pain, but to remind others that sometimes it's the darkness that helps us see the light that's still there." When she stepped out of the studio, the rain had stopped. The sun was breaking through the clouds, and for the first time in months, she looked up, and the sky didn't feel heavy anymore. She took out her phone. A new message glowed on the screen from an unlisted number. "Thank you for finishing what I started, Jay." Winifred froze. She knew Julia was gone, but that message, whoever had sent it, blurred her vision with tears. She smiled softly and whispered to the wind, "You're welcome, Julia. We'll keep living." 2 months after the Donnelly case, winter settled over Chicago. The skyscrapers looked frozen beneath a veil of pale fog, their glass surfaces reflecting the dull amber glow of headlights slicing through the snow. But for those who had lived through Donnelly's deception, the chill outside was nothing compared to what lingered within. The media reported that Ralph Donnelly had died at the scene the case officially closed as a justified act of self-defense. But Detective Raymond knew the truth was messier. The forensics told a different story. The fatal bullet that ended Donnelly's life didn't match Winifred's gun, nor Thomas's. It came from the direction of the window, and no one ever claimed responsibility. When Raymond filed his report, his superior simply said, "Let it go. Don't dig any deeper." That night, He stood before the evidence board, staring at the collage of faces connected by red string. Donnelly, Thomas, Julia, Winifred. So many lives bound by lies. He murmured to himself, "Justice never dies, but sometimes it sleeps very deeply." Then he locked the case file away. Some truths, he knew, were better left unspoken, especially when power had deeper roots than any one man named Donnelly. Maya's trial came sooner than expected. She was sentenced to 12 years in prison for obstruction of justice and forgery of legal evidence. During the hearing, she didn't cry, didn't defend herself. She simply said one thing. "I thought I could control evil with logic, but in the end, I became part of it." Winifred didn't attend the trial, but when she saw the news Maya being led to a prison van, her eyes empty, a strange sorrow rose inside her. Perhaps Maya had truly repented. Perhaps, in another life, they might have been friends. Thomas received 25 years for conspiracy and aiding in financial crimes. Before being transferred, he sent Winifred a handwritten letter, the ink smudged with tears. "Win, I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but every night, when I think of you, I just hope you've found peace. Julia died because I was a coward. You lived because you were brave. Don't let what I did become a wound. Let it be a reminder. I love you, but that love came too late." Winifred folded the letter and placed it in a drawer, the same drawer where she kept things she would never open again. Julia's keepsakes, her mother's silver bracelet, the Hillcrest hotel receipt. She didn't cry. Tears only made everything blur. After the real funeral, the press called Julia the whistleblower who died for the truth. News outlets praised her as a symbol of courage. Her alma mater established the Julia Carter Foundation, a scholarship for women pursuing forensic accounting and financial investigation. Winifred attended the launch ceremony. When asked to speak, she said only, "Julia once told me, the truth doesn't need to be liked, it just needs to be heard. I'm here to make sure it never goes silent." Applause filled the room. But Winifred knew that honor could never erase loss. She only hoped Julia, wherever she was, had finally found peace. That night, Winifred returned to her small suburban house. Snow was falling thick outside. She lit a single candle by the window, its flickering glow trembling against the glass, the same window where she'd once seen Julia's reflection for the last time. The flame wavered gently, like a restless soul still lingering. Winifred whispered softly, "Rest now, Julia. I'll live the rest for you." The following spring, Chicago felt washed clean. The sky was clear, the snow had melted, and the rows of young trees along the river shimmered in a soft green. But Winifred was gone. She had sold the old house and moved to a small coastal town in Oregon, a place where no one knew her name, where the salt wind carried the scent of both freedom and solitude. Her new home had only 2 rooms, a small bedroom and a wooden writing desk by the window. Every morning, she made coffee, opened her laptop, and began typing her first book. The blue folder, The Truth They Tried to Bury. It wasn't a memoir, it was a testimony. Each chapter carried a simple title: Julia, Thomas, Maya, The Night Call. And between the lines, she searched for herself, the woman who once trembled in fear, now writing it all down with a strange, steady calm. In the afternoons, she walked along the beach, where the waves broke softly and the wind tangled her hair. Sometimes she sat on a weathered bench, watching the sun sink behind the water, remembering everything. No tears, left only the quiet stillness that comes after grief has spoken all its words. One day, a boy selling flowers passed by and held out a small bouquet. "Ma'am, lavender for good luck?" She smiled faintly and took it. Lavender, Julia's favorite flower. She placed the bouquet on her desk, right beside her manuscript. In the amber light of sunset, the purple blossoms trembled gently, their scent whispering a truth she already knew. Every good thing begins with honesty. That night, Winifred sat at her desk, reading over what she had written. Some chapters she couldn't finish, her hands froze whenever she typed Thomas's name. She remembered his eyes during the final interrogation, the eyes of a man who knew he'd lost everything, yet still looked at her as if begging for one last forgiveness. She whispered, "I forgave you, but I haven't forgotten." Then she kept writing. Sometimes her pen would pause when a faint tapping came from the window. She'd glance up only to find the wind, or a branch brushing against the glass. But some nights, the knocks came rhythmically, 3 short, 1 long, exactly like the sound from the video Julia had sent. Knock, knock, pause, knock. Winifred stood and opened the window. No one, only the cold wind and the vast, dark sea. One morning, she opened the mailbox at the end of her path. Amid the usual stack of flyers was a single white envelope. No return address. Inside was just one slip of paper with a short message written in familiar handwriting. "Keep writing. J." Her hands trembled. "Julia?" she whispered. Impossible. Julia was dead, she had seen it herself, and yet the slanted handwriting was unmistakable. She turned the paper toward the light. In the upper corner was a faint gray smudge, not ash, but the blurred outline of a fingerprint. Small, slender, feminine. That night, Winifred sat at her desk, staring at the note beneath the lamp. No fear this time, only the quiet certainty that Julia was still there, somehow, woven into everything that remained. She slipped the paper into her manuscript, between the chapters Julia and The Night Call. Then she wrote the book's final line. "When darkness knocks, don't run, open the door. Because sometimes what enters isn't the devil, it's the truth." She saved the file, closed her laptop, and gazed out at the sea. The night sky shimmered with countless stars. Winifred closed her eyes, breathed deeply, and for the first time since everything had begun, she felt truly at peace. 18 months after the Donnelly case, the blue folder, The Truth They Tried to Bury, was officially released. At the book launch, the auditorium was packed. Reporters crowded the aisles, flashes burst like lightning. But Winifred wasn't afraid. She stood on stage in a soft blue dress, her wavy hair brushed neatly, her calm eyes steady. The woman who had once survived a web of lies now stood there to speak only the truth. The host introduced her, and the hall fell silent. She took the microphone, her voice low but unwavering. "I used to think truth was a knife that it cut the hands of the one who held it. But now I know. It's silence that truly wounds." The room held its breath. Then she spoke about that phone call in the night, about Julia, about the people who had fallen for daring to speak out. Every word felt like an echo, raw and real. A journalist stood up and asked, "Mrs. Williams, if you could go back to that night when Julia called, would you do anything differently?" Winifred looked out, her gaze distant, as if she could see through the hundreds of faces before her. "No, because sometimes the moment that terrifies you the most is the one that wakes you up." Applause thundered through the hall. Some stood, tears streaking their cheeks. After the event, Winifred slipped quietly out the back door, away from the noise. Outside, the late afternoon sun scattered like golden dust over the street. She walked slowly along the sidewalk lined with lavender planted by the organizers in memory of Julia. The scent made her smile faintly. A voice called from behind her. "Ms. Winifred?" She turned. A young woman, maybe in her 20s, was holding a copy of the blue folder. My mother was one of Julia Carter's students. She said if it weren't for Julia, she'd never have dared to study finance. I just wanted to say, thank you for writing this. Winifred gently touched the book in the girl's hands and nodded. No, thank you for reading it. The girl smiled and walked away. The wind lifted a few strands of Winifred's hair across her face. For a fleeting moment, she looked up at the sky, and it felt as if Julia was standing there in the amber light, smiling back. That night, she returned to her seaside cottage. On her desk still lay the old manuscript, and between its pages, the note pressed flat. Keep writing? J. She lit a candle and opened the window to let the ocean wind in. The sound of the waves was soft, like breathing. She opened her laptop and typed a short entry on her blog. Sometimes, to survive, you have to let a part of yourself die. But if you can still tell the story, the part that remains is enough to call living. She hit publish, then closed the laptop. Around midnight, as she was about to go to bed, her phone buzzed. A new email from unknown, senderalsecuremail.net. Mail to unknown.senderalsecuremail.net. Subject: Next chapter. The body contained only one line. Hillcrest isn't finished. No attachments, no signature. Winifred stared at the screen, its glow reflecting on her face calm, unreadable. Then she smiled faintly. I know. She deleted the email, turned off her phone, and stepped onto the balcony. Outside, the sea kept rolling in quiet rhythm, and the candle by the window still burned small, but unyielding. The next morning, Winifred left home early. In her bag was a new manuscript, the title handwritten across the cover. The House on Hillcrest, a True Story, Continues. She mailed it to her publisher, then walked away without looking back. The morning sun caught her hair, turning it the color of soft gold, and for the first time in a very long time, Winifred smiled, not because she had won, but because, at last, she was the one writing her own story. 2 years later, Hillcrest, Illinois. A light spring rain fell over the cracked roof tiles. The old hotel, the place where everything had begun, stood silent and sealed off, its once grand halls buried under knee-high grass. A weathered sign swayed on rusted chains. Property sold, under redevelopment. A black car pulled up by the gate. Winifred stepped out, holding a bouquet of lavender and a worn copy of the blue folder. She hadn't returned here in 2 years, not since the night Ralph Donnelly died. But today, she needed to one last time. Not out of fear, but to say goodbye. She walked through the dim hallway, sunlight spilling through broken windows. Her footsteps echoed sharply against the hollow floor. Room 502 was still there peeling paint, faded stains on the wall where once there had been blood. She set the flowers down and whispered softly, "Rest now, Julia. It's over." A breeze slipped through the cracked door, carrying the faint scent of lavender. Winifred smiled and closed her eyes. For a moment, she thought she heard Julia's voice distant, warm, almost smiling. Endings are just another name for beginnings. When she opened her eyes, there was no one there, only sunlight spilling across the decaying wall, like a curtain closing on the past. Her phone buzzed. A new message appeared, no name attached. "You did what I couldn't. Thank you." She stood still for a long moment, eyes on the screen. No fear, just a faint, bittersweet smile. "Goodbye, Julia," she murmured, then turned off the phone and walked out. The sky had cleared. As she drove along the forest road, the wind streamed in through the half-open window. On the passenger seat lay her new manuscript, The House on Hillcrest. She had planned to write its final chapter, but realized now the story no longer belonged to her alone. Everyone in it, Julia, Thomas, Maya, even Donnelly, was part of a larger truth about human nature, deception, fear, and the desperate longing for redemption. That evening, she appeared on the last televised interview of her book tour. The host asked softly, "After everything, what kept you from falling apart?" Winifred paused, then replied, "I once thought I was strong because I survived. But real strength doesn't come from standing up. It comes from admitting you once fell." The studio went silent. The light bathed her face serene, mature, still touched by a shadow of old pain. She continued, voice low but clear. "I've learned that family isn't where we're born. It's where we choose to trust. Julia was my family, even without blood. Thomas was too, even in betrayal. But most of all, I learned to make peace with the one person I feared most myself." The host blinked back tears. "If you could leave one message for our viewers, what would it be?" Winifred looked straight into the camera, her smile soft, her eyes bright. "Listen for the bell in the dark. Sometimes it isn't a warning, it's a call to wake up." Later that night, back in her seaside home, the ocean whispered beyond the window. She opened it, letting the moonlight spill in. On the desk lay Julia's old letter beside the blue folder. She lit a candle and wrote a final line on a blank page. "For Julia, who taught me that truth never dies. It only waits for someone brave enough to tell it." She set the pen down, blew out the flame. The room dimmed, the moonlight casting her shadow across the wall, and for an instant, another shadow seemed to stand beside hers. Slim, still, smiling. The next morning, neighbors said they had seen Winifred's light burning late into the night. When they knocked at dawn, she was resting at her desk, head bowed, candle melted to wax. A faint smile lingered on her lips. On her open laptop, one final line blinked on the screen. "The end, or perhaps the beginning."